Well, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm Kelly Byrnes, and with Bret and Dave, they'll do introductions in a few minutes. Welcome to the 10th edition of the Leadership Book of the Month. And we are excited to be here. We're going to start with a little bit different practice today, and it ties in with our book. So I'm going to invite you to just take a pause. Take a few deep breaths. Make sure you're sitting in a comfortable manner. Excuse me. Take a few, jeepers. Took too many deep breaths. Take a few deep breaths and just inhale, then slowly exhale. You can see us. We can't see you, obviously. In Marshall Goldsmith's book that we're talking about today, The Earned Life, he talks a few times about every breath you take. You're a new person with every breath. So you're a new person as you're pursuing your leadership development. And we welcome you to our broadcast. We're excited to be together. We're excited to be with all of you as well. So when you arrive, we can't tell from our platform who's here or who's not. So if you join us, feel free to put a note in the comments and we will see those. Yeah, we have those triggered. So we'll see those pop up throughout, and feel free to ask any questions throughout the live broadcast as well. And this will be recorded and posted, and the comments will go along with that as well on the LinkedIn version. So we are here for our 10th edition of this conversation, our 10th one together. I had done a few earlier last year on my own, but far better with two other colleagues. And our entire purpose of these conversations is to inspire leaders of today to invest in yourself so you'll be great leaders tomorrow. And the fact is, if you don't invest in yourself, you might not be relevant leaders tomorrow. And today's book sure ties in with that as well. So that's all we do this for. We're not trying to encourage anybody to read all of these books, or obviously we don't get a cut of them or anything, but we are hopeful that we are a little piece of your leadership development journey. So thank you for being with us today. And I mentioned I'm Kelly Byrnes with Voyage Consulting Group. So Bret, welcome back to you. And will you do a brief introduction and what's been an update for you in the last month?
Well, thanks, Kelly. I kind of smiled here, the 10th one of these. I can't hardly believe it. It's
I
amazing
know,
how
can
that.
you believe it?
I know,
Every
10
month,
books
we've
in
not missed
10
one.
months. And yeah, absolutely amazing. And I can't thank you enough for encouraging me to be part of the group. So, as I was preparing, my thought was, what about me inspires, somebody to want to join this? And I tried to put myself in the place of the listening audience and just said, why do I want to give up 30 minutes of my day or however long these go to listen to these guys? What do they have to offer? So I kind of reflected on my accomplishments and, everything that I've done and is something that I've done in any way inspiring. I said, my LinkedIn profile has everything that I've accomplished in terms of our professional life. So I'm not trying to be boastful, but, in addition to what's there, I've raised 2 young kids. And I started to ask myself, if I'm a listener, I see what this guy's accomplished. I see where he's at. Is that a life that I would aspire to lead? And hopefully, as our audience grows and our listening count increases, which it is, that's the validation that we need to say, what we're doing is coming across, it's inspiring, it's working. So that's my little background there. I had one little nugget come up this month, and every month as I'm preparing, I always try to think, what happened this month that was noteworthy that I'd want to share. So I talk a lot about my daughters because I'm a very proud parent. Hopefully everybody that's got children is equally as proud. I'm sure you are. But my youngest daughter just completed her summer internship, and at the end of that intern, there came a job offer. So, yay, applause for my daughter. I was pretty happy about that. So we decided to celebrate, and we went out for dinner here locally in Kansas City. And a couple of years ago, I don't know why, but I started to write a letter for each one of these little occasions, whether it was a graduation or a job opening or something of that nature. I really didn't really have them cadenced out or anything, but I wrote a letter. And they surprised me, my daughters did, about 6 months later, and showed me that they'd been saving them. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is kind of interesting that they've been saving these letters. And so I said, well, they're obviously touching a nerve, so I'm going to commit to doing that. So I wrote a letter,
Yeah, you can't stop now.
No, of course not. I mean, I've got a whole lifetime of memorable events coming up where I'm going to have to write letters, which is fine. So in this letter, this is kind of what the point is. So in this letter, I referenced my library, which you guys can see behind me, which are books, and most of these are learning and development, communication, culture, but they're books for the most part, other than a few that are more of an entertainment value, that talk about soft skills. And in the letter, with the comment I made to my daughter was, at some point, that will be the legacy that I will leave to you, is all this knowledge, all this content, all this material about soft skills, self-awareness, emotional intelligence. And I said, those skills, once you're out of college, will be what separate the good from the great and the better from the best. And I really strongly believe that. So my point to the listening audience is, you're never too young to start thinking about the legacy that you want to leave. You never are too young to start traditions with your families and your loved one. And, just kind of an interesting thing that happened this month, and hopefully that resonates with our listening audience.
That was beautiful. Yeah, that's nice. And you're never too old to do those things either.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Bret. Dave.
All right. Welcome,
everyone. Start writing those letters.
I'm telling you what, that's fantastic. I loved it. Thanks, Bret. Yeah, happy to be back with everybody for yet another month. Dave Lingerfelt, like I said, I work as an educator and also as a consultant in the IT space. So love what I do. Love these opportunities to come out here and selfishly, I feel like I take more away from this than maybe I give back sometimes, because it's always great to have these opportunities to share with great people. And then those of you that message us afterwards, that's so impactful to hear your thoughts and your opinions of what goes on. And I'll, as Bret does a great job of always kind of setting up, what we say next, as he was talking, one thing it kind of made me think of, maybe not quite as cheerful, but when you think about the legacy that we may or may not leave behind. This week, I had to, unfortunately, attend a funeral for an individual that the only way I knew this guy was he was a waiter in our favorite kind of watering hole where my family goes a week. And, he'd been waiting on my family for 10 years, and he passed pretty unexpectedly. And we knew that he didn't have much family. His parents had already passed. He had a brother that he didn't see much, and a niece and a nephew, and that was it. So we talked about it and said, we got to go, because every time we saw this guy, he was always very cheerful. He was always, just a very jovial guy and fun to be around. And you think about that legacy that you leave. And he was very impactful on us. And I said, we've got to go. We've got to go pay our respects. And we showed up to find the funeral home bursting at the seams. It was standing room only for an individual that only had 4 family members alive. So everybody else that was there was talking about the same thing, how this individual was so impactful on their lives, one meal at a time. So Bret, your point is well taken about the legacy that you leave behind. I'm sure he had no idea that he would pass so unexpectedly at a fairly young age, and more to the point, how many people he touched with his life. So it's always good to kind of think about that, what legacy you could leave behind. Once again, Bret, thanks for a great lead in.
Yeah, what a beautiful example. And you don't have to do big, huge things. That was a big thing, that he had this intimate moment with people in their dining experience, and he touched so many people through that. That's amazing.
Well, the thing that's resonating with me right now is the book. Goldsmith talks about living without regret, and that's kind of what the umbrella theme of the book is. Really, it's about living a life without regret. He calls it the earned life, of course. But to Dave's point, I mean, this gentleman that you're referring, you almost have to assume that he lived a life without regret. And shouldn't we all be so fortunate?
Yep.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Let's see. Well, my update has to do with fulfillment. So the earned life, lose regret, choose fulfillment. That's the subtitle. So tying in with all of that, I put what's the saying? A stake in the sand, stake in the ground of purpose-driven, performance-focused, principles-led, and people-centered, and put that as kind of the gateway into working with Voyage Consulting Group. So I have brought on 2 consultants in the last few months, and growing the organization with that as those 4 P's as the kind of the gateway in and into us and for us to work with organizations. And then this week I also took it even a little bit further and submitted a new talk on spiritual leadership. And so tying all those in, bringing your spiritual leadership into the workplace and how to do it and why, and the people are craving that after the pandemic. It turns out there's even research about it. So from McKinsey. So that was pretty exciting to see and submit. So I don't know if I'm accepted yet, but I'll keep you posted next month. I should hear. And please do go to the website. Let me get the banner here for a handout. So each month for the discussions, there's a handout, and there's one posted for today. It's voyagecg.com/leadership books. And it's going to be near the top for today. It'll have a picture of the earned life. There's the book. And there's a handout for today that gives a link to the book and a link to the book's website as well. And so shall we dive in?
Yeah. Well, let's tee this thing up. I'll go ahead and introduce the author. I did a little research on him. Marshall Goldsmith is our author. He's an executive coach. That's really what his claim to fame is. But he began as an educator, and how ironic is that we've got 2 professional educators but it began at Loyola Marymount, and then he co-founded a firm that did executive coaching, Kelly Goldsmith and Company, in 1977. So he's 73 years old right now. But what I found interesting, he's actually credited with creating 360-degree feedback. So, it's hard for me to believe that they can actually pin that to somebody, but he's recognized really as the founder of that. So, and he's a prolific author. He's credited or co-authored with at least 15 books, 2 of which I'm familiar with. One's What Got You Here Won't Get You There. I mean, that's a pretty popular book, and there's a lot of folks that have that title. And
that's one of my favorites. I've given this away to probably hundreds of people.
Yeah, that's a very, very popular book. And then Triggers: Creating Behaviors that Last. So the other part that was kind of interesting was we never talk in this podcast or this broadcast about the websites that support all these books, and the type of books that we profile. They're all supported by websites. So
they're not all. They're not all, but most of them are. And the links to those are on the handout.
Okay. Yeah. And, the Earn Life has a great website and talks a lot about, the things that he covers. There's exercises, there's different things, but the life of an author, this was what kind of got me going on this, because I was interested in this. Once they write a book and put the pen down, they're far from done. Then they get on the speaking tour, the podcast tour. I read a lot about how they actually pay. You'd think they would be paid to be on the podcast. They actually pay to be on the podcast. It's a 50-50 kind of thing. But, there's this elaborate support mechanism that they go through to support. And obviously, it's all designed to sell books and book speaking engagements and things like that. But it was very fascinating to see all that goes into that. And I spent quite a bit of time on Goldsmith's website for this particular book.
And he's somebody I've actually known about for 15 or 20 years, maybe. Been a big fan, and actually communicate with him somewhat regularly. A few years ago, he started Knowledge Philanthropy. So he started being very open about if you have a reason to use his material, to let him know, and he'll talk with you about it and make it available to you. So I created a program and a system called My Fulfilling Life, and it would be a precursor to the Earned Life. He refers to, not it directly, but when he talks in here about you have to know who you are. You have to have a vision for your life. That's what the program that I created with him, My Fulfilling Life, goes into. So I have his support and encouragement with that program. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit at the end and make that available to everybody at the end of our time together. That's my dog sneezing outside of my room or my office. Let's see. Was there anything else on his background? No, I think just you're right on about him being a coach, and he's an exceptional marketer, which he gets into a little bit in the book as well, about credibility. And you could be the best person ever, but if nobody hears about you, then you might not be fulfilling what you could do in your world.
Right.
So before we go into too much of the book, I have a question for the audience. So again, if you are here, we have a comment. Hey, from Paul Haggerty. Nice to see you, Paul. Glad you made it in. And if anybody else, if you join us, please do let us know that you're here. And we usually get a couple people that join us live, and then a lot of people watch the videos after. Or it's a lot to us being regular people in Missouri and Kansas. 500 to 1,000 is pretty good. But if you're here live, please let us know. So I have a question for you. So it's a question that he asks in the beginning of the book, and that is, what does earned mean? So I want you to think about what that means to you, and think about something you've earned. What is something you've earned? And then just reflect on it and draw a link from that to something bigger, to how that ties into your purpose. And that's what he goes into as well. So he gives 5 overall themes to the book. So I thought for our conversation, we'll just go through each one. And they're not just there. That's not what the chapters of the book are. They're just kind of woven throughout. So let's just take each one and share what stood out to you or what you think about each. So the first one was purpose. And I looked at that time to fulfillment, but any thoughts on that, Dave? I saw your head nodding first, so I want to chime in.
Yeah, exactly. I think, I take, this is one of the many things I take into the classroom is, and I ask, what is your purpose? Where do you see yourself 5 years from now when you're graduated? What is your purpose? Is it to be the best analytics person on the planet? Is it to be the best leader on the planet? Of course, tying into the disciplines I teach. But if you're not passionate about your purpose, you might have the wrong purpose. So that's what it really kind of connects to for me.
Nice. Bret, any thoughts related to purpose or anything?
And I'm trying to recall what I read in the book about this, but the thing that resonated, I think he made it a story about a husband and a wife where the husband went on vacation and he just wasn't very fulfilled because his purpose was work. And you have this idea, that I'm working 40 or 50 hours a week and what a miserable life. But if that's my purpose and that's how I bring value and that's how I'm energized, working 50 hours a week isn't miserable. And you think of doctors or professionals or executives, you can pick anybody you want. And granted, there's always trade-offs. And that, he talks a lot in the book about the prices that we pay. But, I'm a little bit that way. I mean, people would look at what I do and how I function and say, well, you're a workaholic, you have no life. And I look when I hear that and I how can you say I have no life? I have a wonderful life. I mean, I am blessed beyond anything I could have ever possibly imagined. And I think, not to be biblical, but the Bible even says work is a blessing. And so, the opportunity to be able to work as much as I do and bring value to my customers and the clients and the people that employ me, I think it's fantastic. So that's where I find my purpose.
That's lovely. And he does talk in there somewhere, I didn't note this for the conversation, but about not judging. So don't judge others. Like your purpose isn't the same as someone else's. So if, maybe you get yours working those hours and from your work, and someone who doesn't shouldn't be judging you for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think there's too much of that going on.
Mm-hmm.
He talks in the book, he gives this, I called it the big A model. I don't know what he called it. I don't think he called it that. But the ambition, aspiration, and action, and the difference between all three. And I think he ties it into how all three of those work together to help you work toward your purpose. But if something's kind of off in your life, it might be one of those is off too much or too little and are overtaking the others. And then you might not feel as fulfilled or feel like your purpose is significant enough to you. So if you do look at the book, you'll see that model, but it was ambition, aspiration, and action. Do you guys remember when he talked about barriers that hold us back? He talked in there about one of them was inertia. Do you remember? That was kind of early in the book, I think.
Well, he had a whole section about that, about what holds you back. And you see, I'm trying to find my notes here as far, because I did write about that.
Page 21 is the beginning of it.
Yeah, and this is what he says: "This barriers holding us back our choices and actions, frustrating our will to live our own life, are formal and numerous." And then he breaks them down into several different areas. I won't go into each one of those. You can find those for yourself. But if you think about that, I mean, he's a CEO coach, so I mean, he's been around some of the smartest people I don't know in the world. But I mean, if you're a CEO, you probably got something going on, right? You've got something on the ball. And so when we talk about that for a minute, when we looked at those 7 things, I just lumped them all into bad habits, right? I mean, he talked a little bit about social media. He talked about, allowing other people to make our decisions. You mentioned inertia, but really, I mean, in my opinion, he was asking us to really take a hold of our own lives, to kind of take action. And there's action words in there: grab control, do something that we know is that's going to go against that inertia. So when you look at all of that, you kind of got it's our call to action to our listeners. And I thought of Goldsmith's title, right? What got you here won't get you there, and that's a barrier, right? So and I didn't want to really jump on the bandwagon, but you start to look at this and we're talking to the audience, and these are action words, guys. You got to do something. You got to do something different. You have to make a change. And I know those things they kind of sound preachy at the end of the day, but again, to quote Goldsmith, what got you here is not going to get you there. So if you want to do something different, if you want to achieve something different, you got to do something different. And that's really, I think, what he's trying to tell us. So that's kind of how I saw it.
Dave, do you want to chime in on that, or?
No, I think I would just be reiterating, but yeah, completely agree. Yeah.
I have to confess that they kind of stung a little. Like I could see that I had done all of them like lately, like different people, different things, different times. And his wording on the social media was, "We're narcotized by vicarious living through others."
Yes.
And so I don't do as much reality TV as I did, 20 years ago when that was new. But, the stuff like that and social media, following copying what some of those people do or that kind of thing, but failure of imagination, obligation to others, well, I said I would do this. Okay, well, maybe you can talk to them and figure something new out. So, hello, I see more people chiming in. Thank you so much.
Great.
Well, I like where you went, Kelly. I mean, those were kind of call outs. They were sort of a gut punch. And, I'm by no means young. And as I read those, they, like you said, they all kind of stung a little bit. So, maybe it was the conversation you have with your mentor or your leader or your partner or whoever. But yeah, I mean, we're all guilty, I think, at some level of some of those and their bad habits. And you know what? You got to make some changes, folks.
Yeah. Yeah, I loved it. The next one was of the 5 themes. The first one was purpose. The next was presence. And he talks a lot about being present and paying attention, being where you are, those kind of things. Do you have anything that tied back to that one? I have a couple if you guys don't.
Yeah, this one really, when we do these books, I always go out and I read, other reviewers and just kind of get their take on it. I do it after we read the book, so it doesn't shift my opinions. But one of them referred to this as a pandemic book, and okay, yeah, sure, and I don't disagree with that. But when I think about this, I think about presence and I think about what the pandemic has done to us. March of 2020, anyone that could get sent home got sent home. And now we're at the point where, for all practical purposes, in most ways, in terms of the workplace, we're kind of saying the pandemic is over. I mean, cases are still out there. We don't have to debate that. But, most of us are kind of coming back. And when we think about presence and what that looks like from a leadership standpoint, I think back to those impactful leaders that I've had in my career. And it made me think of an executive I had very early on that, yes, he had the glass office, and he was, had leadership responsibility over about 50 of us in cubicle world. But one thing he did every single morning without fail was walk around with his cup of coffee and talk to people. And it wasn't,
Nice.
Dave, where are you on the, the blah, blah, blah project? It was, hey, what do you got planned for the weekend? Or, hey, I saw you got a vacation coming up. Where are you planning on taking the family? And I didn't appreciate that presence at the time until he was gone. And of course, as it always goes, the leader you get after that was the polar opposite, went into his office, shut the door, never emerged, was always busy on important things. Time for the people that worked under him. So I think as we come off of this pandemic and start to find our new normal, that presence is so impactful. There's just times, as an educator, I have a lot of flexibility in my schedule, but I can't tell you how many times I tell my wife, I just need to be there. Yes, via Zoom. Yes, I could make a phone call. And she say, I live about 35 minutes away from the office, and you're going to drive 35 minutes one way to the office for a 30-minute meeting and then turn around and drive 35 minutes back. It's like, you know what, I am. It's about the presence, and I need to be there. So that one I think is important, and it's going to get more important as we move through the end stages of this pandemic.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, interesting. Bret, you want to chime in on presence?
As I'm listening, the thing that I kept going to was the conversations we had in our pregame about quiet quitting. We'll run over a long time here if we get too far down this thing, but quiet quitting has just been in the headlines. And I was explaining to Dave and Kelly earlier, I said, I subscribe to Gary Byrnes, who's the CEO of Korn Ferry. He writes some very, very eloquent emails, usually once or twice a month. And he also has written a couple of books, but this last one that I got, he went into this whole, it's not really a phenomena, but it's just a great tagline called quiet quitting, where people are really starting to draw a very firm line between, what they do at home, and call it work-life balance. I think it's probably an easier way to explain it. And our conversation was around, as a leader, how do you do things yourself? I mean, do you draw a line there in that work-life balance? And then how do you deal with your employees? And I think, in my opinion, that whole concept of quiet quitting, I think it's our time, right? And what I mean by that is, 5 years ago, the idea of quiet quitting would have been, if you want to be a quiet quitter, you can just quit, or you'll be fired. I mean, you choose, but I mean, you're either all in or you're not. I mean, you're either on the company bandwagon and you've drank the Kool-Aid, or you're not. And I think, as Dave pointed out, coming out of the pandemic, we're in a different time. And the leverage, the tension right now is really with the employee. I mean, wages are going up. People are job hopping. They're moving around. They're leaving one job for another opportunity. And the days of a pension and some of those kind of things are going by the wayside. So the tension, or the lever, if you want to think of it that way, right now anyway, is with the employee. I can tell you, having been in industry for a long time, it will eventually swing back the other way. It always does. These things go in cycles, but we're in a cycle right now where the topic of quiet quitting, really puts a lot of leverage, I think, with the employee. And employees are exercising their muscle right now, whether it's for benefits, whether it's for flex time, whatever it is.
I wish it wasn't named quitting, though, because they're not quitting. They're still getting their work done. That what that term refers to, they're still being at least average performers. Because there are people that quit their job that just don't leave, and they're not doing a good job, and they're not performing well. And that's a different thing. And I think that is a problem, and that's been going on forever. That's not pandemic related, I don't think. But
no, I think what we used to talk about, especially in the tech sector, as people would stop continuing to retool and learn as technology advanced, we used to call it retiring in place.
Yeah.
They would stop learning new things. And I remember one of the first classes I ever taught when I was teaching at a community college, I had 35 COBOL programmers that had been laid off from DST because they wouldn't learn anything besides COBOL, an obsolete programming language. So,
yeah. So, but the quiet quitting, the they're still doing a decent job, but they don't want their job to be where they get all of their fulfillment. And so then we're back to not judging people for how they get fulfillment.
Yep.
But as a leader, learn what that is for people, have the conversations and find out. And Marshall Goldsmith, I don't recall him talking about, but how about once you go through this for yourself, you work it out with your people too, and talk to them about what does the earned life mean to them. And then as a leader, how can you help that? How can you create circumstances for them to achieve what they would want to achieve? And even if your company is a stepping stone to something else. Hey, that reminds me of an example I was over HR at an ad agency in Chicago, and in confidence, somebody came to me, a senior level person, didn't want to do her ad agency job anymore, which was a key job. She wanted to open a dog walking company. And so, and I thought, oh no, how are we going to do without her? She was great at her job. It was a one person did that work, and she was a key player in a bunch of different things. But the senior team, once I talked with everybody, we rallied around her. And man, she had the best creative work you could ever have as a new person opening a business. She had all the things lined up because the company did those things for her, and she stayed and helped us find the new person. And she stayed a couple months and trained the new person. And, you know, she did right by us. We did right by her and helped her. It was fantastic, you know, the best, but she trusted us and we did right by that trust. You know, she, but was helping her accomplish what she wanted to accomplish, not just, you know, come on, one more, you can do it. You know, I'll raise your fee or raise your salary, because then you raise it, you do something like that, and they're just miserable after, you know,
Right.
with the dollars for a few minutes, and then they're miserable again. Okay, so the first theme was purpose, the second was presence, and then the third was community. So Bret, you want to kick off community, because I know that was one of your favorites.
Sure. I've shared, I think, on the call here, I'm, 54, and I was downsized last year. I think I've shared that. If I didn't, maybe it's the first time, but I was downsized. Had a big VP title and all the perks and trappings that go along with that title. And, the company that I work for reorganized. So, and having been around industry long enough, we all know people that's happened to. And when that happened, we always tell folks, hey, be prepared for today to be your last day, because someday it will. And, I'll confess I wasn't as prepared as I probably could have been or should have been. But anyway, long story short, what I realized was, what am I going to do with myself? I wasn't quite yet ready to retire. I wasn't prepared to retire. And I said, what do I have that's going to bring value? What can I do that, I can monetize? And what I quickly realized I had a community, a network of contacts, about 1,600 is what I crunched it down to, of contacts, of people that trusted me and relied on me to, provide them value, whether it was source them product or give them market intelligence, pair them with supply, navigate all the nuances that go into protein procurement and supply. And as I prepared, that whole idea of community, what I really kind of thought to myself is how quickly we can get into a rut. And again, I thought of Kelly and Dave, they're educators. So every semester, right, you get a new group of your community, right? You had 30 people or 35 people, new students, that you're expanding your community. And if you were to sit down and say, well, I've taught X number of classes and X number of students, all of those students in some form or fashion are part of your community. And I'm sure many of them stay connected with you even now that they're no longer students. So my call to action again, because that's really, I think what we're trying to do is make people better than when you join the call, is what are you doing to grow your network? What are you doing to expand your community? And it's so easy. I do this, I think I've talked about this. I do my little TED talk at Rockers every once in a while when the professionals will call me back, and I say, it's so easy to get comfortable with your little network of my family and the people that I go to work and see every day. And that will eventually grow stale, and you will no longer be the smartest person in the room, and you will absorb everything that they have to offer, and you will have given everything that you have to offer. And you kind of just reach this point of equilibrium where they're not growing and you're not growing, and you kind of just are. And the point here that I think Goldsmith makes and I'm making is, you've got to expand your community. You've got to be deliberate about it. You've got to get outside of your comfort zone. We use that term, right? Being comfortable, being uncomfortable. You've got to join clubs. You've got to go to talks. You've got to go to symposiums and conferences, take a class, right? Get your MBA, go to graduate school. But all of those things, all of those things expand your network and they grow your community. And that is what will, really, I think, support many of us as we move forward. I know in my case, without my community, air quotes, right? I don't know that I would really be where I'm at today. And I'm happy to say, I've more than recovered from, any financial harm that may have come about. I'm in a fantastic place and really have a fantastic path going forward. But again, it's all because of community.
Mm-hmm. Dave, you were nodding right along there.
Oh, yeah. Bret, you made a great point in your prior commentary about, we were talking about quiet quitting, and, you said this will fade and we'll eventually get back to a point where people are hurting for work. And I know when I left, my corporate job, there were several people that I very much wanted to stay in contact with and maintain that network. And there was one particular individual that, about every 6 months through LinkedIn, I'd reach out and say, hey, can we have a cup of coffee? Can we have lunch? And I had no agenda. It's just an individual that I respected and looked up to and wanted to stay in contact with. And there was nothing I had that this individual could gain from at the time. So they blew me off. So after about 3 years, I stopped asking every 6 months. And what happened? That individual got let go very unexpectedly. Well, guess who got contacted? He reached out to me and said, hey, I think we should grab that cup of coffee. And I had got wind that the company had done a pretty big layoff. And my only response back to him was, you must have got laid off. And he said, well, yes, I did. And I said, well, I'm really busy right now. And someone told me a long time ago, said, at all times, you've got to keep the pipes hot, referring to his network, and said, you've got to take that time to have the lunch, to have the cup of coffee, to have the beer, because you never know. About that sense of community. Bret, you nailed it. It's, what does my LinkedIn profile look like? Who could I call that would answer the phone? And I often use that expression to my students that, if I got fired tomorrow, so-and-so would be my first call, so-and-so would be my second. And it's so important.
Well, I think to your point, Dave, it doesn't come natural. You have to be deliberate about it. And you have to make it an initiative. You have to put effort into it. And I guess for some people, they're naturally, people, right? They enjoy other people. And then there's other people that, it's just not so much. Sure. And I guess we all make the assumption, and I know it's a bad assumption, that everybody wants to be a CEO. Well, we know that's not true. But, everybody aspires to be something more than they are. I think we can make that assumption. So if you do aspire to be something more than you are, you've got to say, hey, how am I investing in myself? And investing in your community, your network of contacts, is one of the fastest and easiest and probably the most beneficial ways that you can make that investment.
Yep. And I just saw the comment in the chat, leaving corporate is like leaving the Matrix, just like Nemo. Yeah. We just showed my daughter the Matrix series of films. So that comment was spot on. Thank you.
Yeah. And he talks in the book about when there's career changes, and I forgot the third one, but he talked about experience and your network and adjacency. Remember, he talked about adjacency. So if you're going to pivot, it's going to be to something that is near your expertise, experience, expertise in it, and a network. So that's what you have to bring forward and bring to the table. So that network he emphasizes. Also, as part of community, he emphasized asking for help. And he talks about asking for help is a lost art. So I have another exercise for our audience, for the listeners. So here's something else I want you to do is we're going to give you an award. You're going to go up on this. Oh, no, wait. First, think about your top 5 or 10 accomplishments. The top 5 or 10 things you've accomplished throughout your career, or I guess life. Okay, now you're going to get the award for those things, and you're going to go up on the stage and thank people. So who would you thank for those awards? That's one of the exercises in the book. And then think about the gratitude you have for those people, and all of the help that you've had over your life. And that's your community. All those different people in the different stages of your life, that's your community. But the next thing he suggests is think about the times you didn't ask for help. What more might you have accomplished if you had asked for help? So don't be afraid to ask for help. Reach out to people, and the people that helped you before want to help you again, and people want to be on the team. So reach out and ask for help. So that's a pretty good experience. So I hope you'll do that exercise. I'll put the link to the handout, and you can do the exercise on the notes provided. I think that's one of the ones that's on the handout. Okay, so purpose, presence, community, and then the fourth one was impermanence. So nothing is permanent. Life changes. Turning points in life, he talked about changes in life. Well, one note I thought about was some changes in life can be anticipated. So we know if you're, after high school, you're going to trade school, you're getting a job, you're going to college. 4 years later, what are you doing after that? In your 20s and 30s, buying your first home or living on your own and changing in your family and that kind of thing. As in my 50s, I know my parents are becoming more of my responsibility. So there's certain things you can expect, Bret, and your children are in college. And when they get out of college, your life will change in that regard. And so as we all go through different stages, you can anticipate some changes in life and some turning points. But then others come from the people that come in and out of your life. They bring turning points too. That was the one that Marshall Goldsmith was the most important one to him. But some other ones can be jobs that, I'm big on having a career plan, but my career's never gone according to my plan. But just by having a plan and working towards something, other cool things happen. But those are part of it. Locations, if you move, those can be part of it. Timing, age. Anything else on impermanence? Any other thoughts on? Nothing. Okay, and then the last one was results. Being mindful of our time. Results. And so he's not talking about the earned life as just all fluff and just do stuff for fun. Regrets. Lose regrets and choose fulfillment. Fulfillment means results about something. There's outcomes. So what are any thoughts that tie back up to that?
Yeah, for me, I know when I made my first step into leadership, one of the hardest messages I had to deliver to an employee when it came time for annual review was they had a very different perception of their performance than I did. And it was a question of effort versus results. And the individual said, well, I've worked really hard. I'm the first one here every day. I'm the last one out the door. I always jump on the task. And I said, you're 100% right. You are the first one here. You're the last one out the door every day. But effort doesn't necessarily equal results. And at the end of the day, here's the results we were going for. And this is how you fell short. And, I take ownership in that as well as, I should have coached better along the way to say, hey, you're not hitting the mark here. But I think that's where, again, as an educator, that's how I really try and convey this to my student population is, some students might have to work 20 hours on an assignment. Others might work 10 and get a better grade. And that's life. Some things, come to others easier, and effort doesn't always equal performance or results. So I think that's very key. And I liked how the author kind of tied that theme in as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. Bret, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think the same thing. He started out and he said, hey, at the end of the day, leaders ultimately have to deliver results. And then he framed everything else around that. So the part that I kept thinking about as I was reading that section of the book was, you can go through 12 months of your calendar, a lot like what Dave talked about there, and really get nothing done. And there was a movie, I don't remember what the movie was, but there was a scene where a husband and wife are with a counselor and they say, we get through the day. And I don't remember what the movie was, but the counselor's response was, is that your goal, to get through the day? And I think we can all say that, right? We can get through the week, we can get through the month, we can get through the year, and then we reflect back and did we accomplish anything? to Dave's point, hey, I was busy, but we didn't really get anything done. And I've kind of challenged myself and my family to say, hey, we don't have to spend a lot of money, but we're going to do something noteworthy. And what really triggered that for me, we had friends down around Memorial Day, and the gentleman had actually canoed the Mississippi River from Minnesota to New Orleans, and he was retired, the guy was. But we sat and talked to this guy, and he had done some remarkable things, and they didn't cost a lot of money. And I think we kind of all can challenge ourselves to say, hey, what am I going to do this year that 10 years from now I'm going to remember? And it talks a lot in the book and about all of our research on quiet quitting. There's no such thing as, hey, I spent a lot of hours at the office. I mean, we have an opportunity to do some remarkable things, and they don't all have to involve a lot of money, but take time to do something remarkable.
Oh, I like that quote. Take time to do something remarkable.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. But the remarkable thing could be that you're present when your customers come in to have their dinner, and you're paying close attention to them and showing care and love for them. So like the gentleman that Dave brought up before we got started, that's remarkable to do that day in and day out. You make an impact on people, a couple people at a time. That's remarkable. That's a remarkable life. But that takes a lot of presence. That takes paying attention. That's choice, all the things that he talks about in the book. And Dave, to your point about the life can happen, the author Marshall Goldsmith lists 6 success factors, and 4 of them are internal, and they're motivation and ability, understanding, and confidence. But then 2 of them are external. It's like we can't control the marketplace. I can do everything that I can for my business and have all the best, strategic plan and marketing plan and all the things, but the market dictates what happens there. And then support, also tying back to community. So having the support that you need. He also, for results, talked about delay gratification. That was a huge part of it. Paying the price now for the reward later. And then he used a lot of golf analogy, talking about play the shot now and recover quickly, or I forgot how he worded it, but recover quickly from the errors that are going to occur. So that one kind of struck me too, like to get back focus quickly like a golfer does after they've made an error.
Yeah.
So that will affect your results if you're in that mindset, or if you're still beating her up from hole number 14 and you're on 16. What the heck is the point of that?
Yeah, you nailed it, Kelly. I'm working with my daughter to be a musician, and performing in front of people. I said, when you make a mistake, it's already happened. Move on. Don't let that mistake impact you for the rest of the song. Worse yet, for the rest of the set, and even worse yet, for the rest of the gig. You made it. You can't reverse it. Recover like a professional and move on as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm. And if you do that, they forget.
Yeah, that's right.
And they want you to do well. They'll come with you.
That's right.
Oh, yeah, right on. So we talked about purpose, presence, community, impermanence, and results. So those were the 5 themes that the author shared in the book. Any last comments on this book? We'll wrap up.
Yeah, I had one bullet here, and I the way I framed it up, I said, we're not so naive to believe that everybody reads the book that listens. I'm sure if half of you do, great. But, of the 10 that we've profiled so far, there's 2 or 3 that I really want to emphasize and promote and encourage. And this is one of those. So, and each one of the books has kind of had a different slant to them, whether it's how to conduct a meeting or, how to do a stand-up, radical candor, how to talk to your team. This book is all about you. It's all about personal development. It's all about the individual and not so much about the team. So if that's really what you're looking for as a listener, as a reader, I highly recommend this book. And I'm sure there's other great books out there, don't get me wrong. But, this one is very, very well done. And I think it hits a lot of really positive notes. And I think it'll be a book, and it flows well. It reads well. It's got a good tempo, good cadence. It's not one of those that you're going to have a hard time wading through like some others. So, that's my own personal endorsement to say, hey, if you haven't picked this book up, either in printed form or audiobook, I certainly encourage it.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thanks, Bret. Dave?
Yeah, agreed. I think that's, if anything, you might not all read the book before you join us. Maybe you're watching this to decide if you want to read the book. It's perfectly okay to watch this and go, no, not really what I'm looking for. So yeah, I thought book as well. It really had those underlying themes throughout the book. I think, especially, like I said, the point about presence and community is going to carry us a long way as we move outside of this pandemic in terms of the employee marketplace.
Yeah. And my last comment on this book was that, kind of tying into what Dave brought up a minute ago, is that the author brings up near the very end that you can do all of the things that he talks about in the book, and life still happens and everything isn't going to go your way.
Yep.
So it's about the journey. So relish, enjoy the journey, and be present for the journey. And that's really the ultimate of the earned life. He defines the earned life as when the choices, risks, and effort we make in each moment align with the overarching purpose of our lives, regardless of the eventual outcome. So it's not really about the outcome. It really is about the journey. So we appreciate you all for joining us for today's book discussion on the earned life. Our next one, it will be September 22nd, and it is on the Ministry of Common Sense. Can you see it? The Ministry of Common Sense by Martin Lindstrom. So this is one I've seen this author speak a couple times. Okay, listen to this subtitle: How to Eliminate Bureaucratic Red Tape, Bad Excuses, and Corporate Bullshit Stuff. BS, corporate BS. So definitely one worth checking out. So join us next month for the next one, and I'll put the link to that in the chat. Oh, the other thing I was going to share is wrapping up today's on the My Fulfilling Life project that I worked on, or program. I will share it next Thursday at 4:00, so same time as today. I will do a Zoom, I think I'll do. So I didn't have it all set up because I have a tight deadline today and I'm going out of town tomorrow for vacation. So in full transparency, but if you would like to join and have the resource for no fee, you're welcome to, let's see, send me a direct message in LinkedIn or an email. And if we're connected, you have my contact information, or you can find it on the Voyage CG website easy. So if you would like to be invited to that, I think I mean, anybody could come, but I think it really ties in great with this conversation today. So I was planning to make it available to anybody that joined today or anyone that watches the video by September 1st. So we'll do it September 1st at 4:00, My Fulfilling Life, and it'll be available for anybody who wants to join. And I'll give you the program materials at no fee as well. And they're really, really good, created by me with Marshall Goldsmith. So look forward to sharing that with you and to seeing everybody next month for the Ministry of Common Sense. So thank you everyone for joining. Thanks. Paul and Kathy, I know, is here. Jagdeep, thank you for coming. And then we can't see everybody's names, so for chiming in. And for everyone that watches, we appreciate you as well. And thank you to Dave and Bret also.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
You're welcome.
See you next month, or see you soon, next week or next month.